Darren Dion Van. In 2010, a journalist named Thomas Hargrove built an algorithm to detect serial killers hiding in plain sight. His computer flagged Gary, Indiana, and told police a strangler was hunting women in their city. They ignored him. 4 years later, police would find 7 bodies scattered across Gary's 10,000 abandoned buildings. And the man responsible? He'd been on their radar the entire time. Darren Dion Van was born on March 21, 1971. He served in the Marines until 1993, when he received an other-than-honorable discharge. The details of why remained sealed. What we do know is what came next. In Texas, Van was convicted of aggravated sexual assault and sentenced to 5 years. When he was released in July 2013, the state classified him as a low-risk sex offender. Low risk. Remember that phrase? Within 15 months of his release, Darren Van had murdered 7 women. He found his victims on Backpage.com using the screen name Big Boy Appetite. He targeted women in vulnerable situations, sex workers, women struggling with addiction, women whose disappearances wouldn't make the evening news, and Gary gave him the perfect hunting ground. The city had over 10,000 abandoned structures, empty homes where no one would hear screams, basements where bodies could decompose for months without anyone noticing. Taira Bate was 28, a mother. Sonia Billingsley was 52. Tanya Gatlin was 27. Christine Williams was 36, a mother of 4. Van allegedly killed her because she owed him $40 for crack cocaine. Tracy Martin was 41. Van strangled her with her own necklace. Aneth Jones was 35. And then there was Afrika Hardy. Afrika was 19 years old. She'd just moved from Colorado to Chicago after graduation. Her mother described her as funny and charismatic. On October 17, 2014, Afrika went to meet a client at a Motel 6 in Hammond, Indiana. When her business partner couldn't reach her by phone, she drove to the motel herself. She found Afrika's body in the bathtub. But this time, Van made a mistake. The motel had surveillance cameras. They captured his blue 2013 Jeep. They recorded him entering and leaving the room. Cell phone tower data led police straight to his door. And when they arrested him, Van did something that shocked investigators. He started talking. Over the next 48 hours, Van voluntarily led police to 6 more bodies hidden throughout Gary's abandoned homes. He showed them exactly where he'd dumped each woman. During interrogation, Van tried to explain what drove him. He said it relieves the pressure. He said when stuff doesn't go right, he's looking for an out. He called himself crazy. But here's what makes this case truly disturbing. Van told investigators he'd killed way more victims in Illinois than Indiana. He said he would get on trains or buses to get far away from his family when he felt himself slipping. The FBI is still investigating. Statistical analysis shows that Chicago's strangulation murder rate dropped significantly when Van was imprisoned in Texas from 2008 to 2013. When he was released, the numbers climbed back up. On May 4, 2018, Van pleaded guilty to all 7 murders. He cursed at the judge during one hearing, telling him to kiss his expletive and go ahead and kill me. He didn't even attend his own sentencing. Today, Darren Van sits in an Indiana prison. He will never be released. In August 2021, a crime podcast obtained 15 hours of his interrogation recordings through a Freedom of Information request. Investigators in Chicago are still going through 50 unsolved strangulations from 2001 to 2018. They believe some of them belong to Van. Teira Bhatti's fiancé had her ashes made into a crystal egg. He said of Van, "He don't have a heart. He don't have a soul." But if you think a man who killed 7 women and potentially dozens more is the worst Indiana has to offer, wait until you hear what the next criminal did to his victims after they were dead. William Clyde Gibson. On October 10, 2002, a man got a tattoo to commemorate a special occasion. It was the date 10/10 with a knife image beside it. That same day, near the Ohio River, the body of 44-year-old Karen Hodella washed ashore. She was a beautician from Florida. She'd been stabbed in the throat. The tattoo? It was William Clyde Gibson's way of celebrating his first murder. He got it on his birthday. Gibson was born October 10, 1957. By the time police finally caught him, he'd killed 3 women across a decade. But what he did to his final victim is what landed him on Indiana's death row. In 1991, Gibson was convicted of raping his sister-in-law. He also committed sexual battery and robbery at a Louisville mall. He served time and was released in April 1999, added to the sex offender registry. But that didn't stop him. In 2001, Gibson stole a Harley-Davidson and did 3 more years. He racked up over 10 criminal charges between Karen Hodella's murder in 2002 and what happened in 2012. Nobody connected the dots. In January 2012, Gibson's mother died. Neighbors said her death greatly impacted his psyche. Within 3 months, he would murder 2 more women. Stephanie Kirk was 35 years old. On March 25, 2012, Gibson strangled her, raped her, and broke her back. Then he buried her body in his own backyard. Nobody knew Stephanie was missing. Nobody knew she was dead. Gibson just went about his life with a woman's corpse decomposing in his yard. 3 weeks later, he killed again. Christine Whitus was 75 years old. She was a retired widow, and she was Gibson's late mother's best friend. Christine had always supported Gibson. She gave him money throughout his life. She trusted him. On April 18, 2012, Gibson repaid that trust by raping her, strangling her, and then doing something so disturbing, the courtroom gasped when they heard it. He severed one of her breasts. When police arrested Gibson the next day after a brief car chase, they found that body part in the glove compartment of Christine's minivan. He was drunk behind the wheel of a dead woman's car, with a piece of her body beside him. Gibson's sister had come to their mother's home to settle estate matters. She found Christine's nude, mutilated body in the garage. During interrogation, Gibson didn't just confess to Christine's murder. He told police about Stephanie Kirk, buried in his backyard, a murder they didn't even know had occurred. And he told them about Karen Hodella, killed a decade earlier in Florida. At his trial for Christine Whitus's murder in October 2013, the jury deliberated for less than 20 minutes before finding him guilty. They unanimously recommended death. Gibson's response? No big deal. He said he deserved what he was getting. Before trial, Gibson had shaved his head and tattooed Death Row ×3 on the back of his skull. His lawyers argued this could prejudice the jury. He didn't care. Today, William Clyde Gibson is one of 8 men on Indiana's death row. He's been interviewed multiple times and claims responsibility for over 30 additional murders across multiple states. He says he practiced cannibalism on some of his victims' corpses. None of these claims have been confirmed. Stephanie Kirk's father, Tony, said it plainly. He's pure evil. He's not insane. He's not stupid. He's just a cold-blooded killer. Indiana resumed executions in 2024 after a 15-year pause. Gibson has exhausted multiple appeals. An execution date could come any day. But Gibson's crimes, as horrific as they are, involved strangers. The next case on our list shows that sometimes the monster lives inside your own home. Amanda Carmack. On August 31st, 2019, a 10-year-old girl named Skylee Carmack took her stepsister's charm bracelet. She broke it apart and gave the pieces to other kids in the neighborhood. It was the kind of thing kids do, a small mistake. Something a normal family would handle with a conversation and maybe a timeout. But Skylee didn't live in a normal family. Her stepmother, 34-year-old Amanda Carmack, set up a video call with her husband Kevin, who was away for work. They discussed what to do about the bracelet. Kevin told Amanda to leave it alone until he got home. Sometime between 4:30 and 6 that evening, Amanda ignored her husband's instructions. She first tried to strangle Skylee with her bare hands. When that didn't work fast enough, she grabbed a pair of jeans. The medical examiner who performed Skylee's autopsy later testified that the knot Amanda tied around the 10-year-old's neck was one of the tightest knots he had seen in his entire career. After Skylee stopped breathing, Amanda put her body in plastic trash bags and hid it in the shed behind their home. She used air fresheners, dryer sheets, and candles to mask the smell. Around 9 that night, Amanda called the police and reported Skylee missing. A statewide silver alert went out. Search parties formed. Neighbors combed the area looking for a missing child who was already dead, hidden just feet from where her stepmother stood, giving interviews. For 4 days, the search continued. On September 4th, around 3 in the morning, police found Skylee's body in that shed. The body was feet from where Amanda had first reported her missing. Amanda failed a polygraph during the investigation. Eventually, she confessed. She told investigators she started choking Skylee with her hands, then tied something about her neck. But here's the detail that haunts everyone who heard this case. When asked at trial why she killed a 10-year-old girl over a broken bracelet, Amanda Carmack said 2 words: "Things happen." The first trial in November 2020 ended in a mistrial because of COVID-19. The second trial in August 2021 lasted just a few days. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty. Amanda Carmack was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. 6 other children living in that home were removed by Child Protective Services. She appealed. On January 12, 2023, the Indiana Supreme Court unanimously rejected that appeal. Skylee Rain Carmack was 10 years old. She liked crafts and playing with other kids in the neighborhood. She took a bracelet and gave pieces of it to her friends. Her stepmother killed her for it, hid her body in a shed, and when asked to explain herself, said things happen. Amanda Carmack killed 1 child out of what appears to be a sudden rage. The next criminal on our list took lives slowly, methodically, and over a much longer period of time. In fact, investigators believe he may have killed over 100 people, and nobody noticed for years. Orville Lynn Majors. Vermilion County Hospital in Clinton, Indiana, was a small facility, the kind of place where nurses knew their patients by name, where families trusted the staff to care for their elderly loved ones. Between May 1993 and March 1995, something strange started happening at Vermilion County Hospital. Patients started dying at an alarming rate. 1 nurse was present for almost all of them. Orville Lynn Majors was born April 24, 1961. He worked as a licensed practical nurse, the kind of healthcare worker who handles basic patient care, administers medications, and monitors vital signs. He seemed dedicated. He received glowing evaluations. Patients and families liked him. But here's what the numbers showed. During Majors' 22-month tenure, the hospital recorded 147 deaths. Majors was present for 130 of them. When Majors was on duty, the hospital averaged 1 death every 23 hours. When Majors was off duty, one death every 551 hours. That's roughly every 23 days. Patients were 42 times more likely to die when Orville Lynn Majors was working. On one single shift, all 4 patients in the ICU died. A nursing supervisor named Dawn Styrek noticed something was wrong. In March 1995, she conducted an informal study. She checked time cards against death records. The pattern was undeniable. An anonymous letter was sent to the Indiana State Department of Health accusing Majors of killing patients. An investigation began. When investigators searched Majors' home and van, they found vials of potassium chloride and epinephrine, the same drugs that could stop a heart and make it look like natural causes. The vials were traced back to the hospital. An electrophysiologist analyzed the EKG patterns of patients who died during Majors' shifts. The heart rhythms were consistent with only one thing: potassium overdose. Witnesses came forward. A former roommate named Andrew Harris had seen drug vials at their shared home. Other nurses remembered seeing Majors injecting patients moments before they coded. One acquaintance named Donald Miller testified that Majors directly admitted to using potassium chloride to kill patients in 1996, but the most disturbing testimony came from people who knew him personally. Witnesses testified that Orville Lynn Majors hated elderly people. He called patients demanding and whiny. He said old people should be gassed. The trial took place in Brazil, Indiana, in late 1999. It lasted 5 to 6 weeks. 79 witnesses testified. The jury had been selected from Miami County and sequestered for the duration to avoid media contamination. On October 17, 1999, the jury found Orville Lynn Majors guilty of 6 murders. Mary Ann Alderson, 69, Dorothea Hickson, 80, Luella Hopkins, 89, Freddie Dale Wilson, 56, Derek Maxwell Sr., 64, Margaret Hornick, 79. Judge Yelton called it a parallel of evil at its most wicked. The sentence was 360 years, 6 consecutive 60-year terms. His earliest possible release date would have been July 1st, 2177. Orville Lynn Majors never confessed. He maintained his innocence until the end. On September 24, 2017, Majors died of heart failure at Indiana State Prison. He was 56 years old. After his conviction, 80 families filed wrongful death lawsuits against Vermilion County Hospital. Investigators believe the true death toll could be as high as 130 victims. We'll never know the real number. Orville Lynn Majors was called the Angel of Death. He used his position of trust to murder the most vulnerable people in his community. And he did it for almost 2 years before anyone stopped him. But if you think the system failing to catch a killer is bad, wait until you hear about David Edward Moust. The system didn't just fail to catch him. They knew exactly how dangerous he was. He begged them to keep him locked up, and they let him out anyway. David Edward Moust. In 2003, police in Hammond, Indiana, used a cadaver dog named Ammo to search a basement at 4933 Ash Avenue. When the dog alerted, they brought in jackhammers. 12 inches below freshly poured concrete, they found the bodies of 3 teenage boys. The man who buried them had killed before, multiple times, across multiple states, over 3 decades. And he had warned everyone exactly what he would do if they ever let him out. David Edward Moust was born April 5, 1954. His childhood was a nightmare documented in psychiatric files. At 9 years old, his mother placed him in Chicago State Hospital. She claimed he had tried to drown his brother. Hospital staff evaluated the boy and found no evidence of troubling behavior. They believed his mother had simply dumped him there. Moust spent 4 years institutionalized. He later compared it to solitary confinement. At 13, he was sent to a children's home where he was sexually molested. When he tried to return to his mother, she threatened him with a knife. By the time Maust joined the army, something inside him had broken. In 1974, while stationed in Germany, Maust beat a 13-year-old boy named James McClister to death. He was convicted and served only 4 years. 4 years. In 1981, Maust killed again. 15-year-old Donald Jones was drowned in a quarry in Elgin, Illinois. This time, Maust received a longer sentence. He went to prison knowing something about himself that the parole board would later ignore. Before his release in 1999, Maust wrote a 5-page letter to prison officials. He begged them not to let him out. The prosecutor who handled his case sent a fact sheet calling him the most dangerous inmate you will house. The Cook County Sheriff wrote on extradition paperwork a simple warning: bad guy. They released him anyway. Maust moved to Hammond, Indiana. The neighborhood, kids called him Crazy Dave. He befriended teenagers by giving them money, alcohol, and marijuana. In 2001, Maust attacked an acquaintance, hitting him 6 times in the back of the head with a metal pipe. The victim declined to press charges. 2 years later, Maust killed 3 more boys. Nicholas James was 19. James Regagni was 16. Michael Dennis Jr. was just 13 years old. Maust strangled them and buried their bodies in his basement. Then he poured 12 inches of concrete over their graves and went about his life. Detective Lieutenant Ron Johnson recognized a pattern when 2 neighborhood boys went missing. They'd been seen with Maust. A background check revealed his history of killing teenage boys. The cadaver dog Ammo found the bodies. The jackhammers confirmed what everyone feared. On the day his death penalty trial was scheduled to begin, October 31st, 2005, Maust pleaded guilty to 3 counts of murder in exchange for the death penalty being taken off the table. He received 3 consecutive life sentences without parole. But Maust had one final decision to make. On January 20th, 2006, just 27 hours after being told he would be transferred to state prison, David Edward Maust hanged himself with a braided bedsheet. He left a 7-page suicide note. In it, he confessed to all 5 of his known killings. He apologized to the families. He wrote, "Maybe with my death, the families and the people can go on with their lives and not waste energy wondering why I was still alive." He also left behind an 87-page diary detailing his urges to hurt boys. The diary documented more than 20 instances where he gave in to violent compulsions. In his own words, he wrote, "When I got locked up in the Army, and then especially when I got locked up in 1981, I knew I should never be let out again." David Edward Maust knew exactly what he was. He told everyone who would listen. He literally begged the prison system to keep him locked up. They didn't listen. 3 more boys died because of it. The families of those boys will never get answers about how the system failed so completely. How a man who admitted he was a danger to children was released not once, not twice, but multiple times. If you're liking this video and you're not subscribed yet, now's the time. We drop new cases every day. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Eugene Britt. In the summer of 1995, women in Gary, Indiana started disappearing. Then their bodies started turning up, strangled, violated, dumped in alleys and abandoned lots. Over 4 months, at least 7 women and girls were murdered by the same man. And the youngest victim, she was 8 years old, riding her bike looking for frogs. Eugene Victor Britt was born November 4th, 1957. He grew up in poverty with alcoholic parents. He watched his father beat his mother. He dropped out of school at 14 and lived on the streets using drugs. In 1978, Britt raped a 17-year-old girl who was walking home from school. He served 15 years. He was released on parole in August 1993. Within 2 years, the bodies started piling up. Sarah Harrington was 34. Her body was found May 16, 1995. She was the first. Nikita Moore was just 14 years old, found June 24th. Deborah McHenry, 41, July 18th. Michelle Burns, 27, August 13th. Betty Askew, 51, September 2nd. Cleaster McNeil, 29. Her family called her Precious. Found September 12th. Tanya Dunlap, 24, November 8th. Britt's method was consistent. He attacked women from behind, dragged them to isolated areas, raped them, then strangled them to death. But it was his 8th victim who would haunt the community forever. Sarah Lynn Paulson was 8 years old, a 2nd grader at Aylesworth Elementary School. On August 22, 1995, she rode her bike near her home in Portage, Indiana, looking for frogs. She never came home. Search parties combed the area. Her photo was everywhere. The community was terrified. They found Sarah's body in a wooded area near her home. She had been strangled. She had been raped. She was 8 years old. The break in the case came from something small. Forensic investigators found approximately 20 fibers on Sarah's body, blue polyester and green colors. The fibers matched employee uniforms from Hardee's restaurant. Eugene Britt worked at the Hardee's in Portage. On the day Sarah disappeared, he had been sent home early. Police arrested Britt on November 3, 1995. His 38th birthday. 3 days after his arrest, Britt confessed. Not to police initially, but to Clyde Smith, the head of the homeless shelter where Britt had been living. Smith was also a pastor. During an 8-hour interrogation, Britt confessed to 10 murders and led police to previously undiscovered remains. He claimed voices in his head commanded the killings. Investigators learned that Britt had attempted suicide on September 14, 1995, jumping in front of a train. He survived with a broken leg. He was released from the hospital and went on to kill again. At trial, the prosecution sought the death penalty. But Britt's defense successfully argued that his intellectual disability, with an IQ of approximately 60, made him ineligible for execution. In May 1996, Britt was sentenced to life plus 100 years for Sarah Paulson's murder in Porter County. In October 2006, he pleaded guilty but mentally ill to additional murders in Lake County and received 245 more years. At his sentencing, Britt burst into tears. He begged for forgiveness. He said he was sorry. Detective Dave Reynolds, who later became Porter County Sheriff, said the case put the city in shock, put the city to its knees. 20 years later, strangers still visit Sarah Paulson's grave at McCool Cemetery. They leave tokens and flowers for a little girl who just wanted to find frogs. Eugene Britt will die in prison. He killed at least 7 people in 4 months, including an 8-year-old child. And the only thing that saved him from execution was his own limited intelligence. But if you think Britt's crimes are as dark as this list gets, the next case involves something that shocked even hardened homicide detectives. A man who didn't just kill his victim, he ate her. Joseph Oberhansley. On the night of September 10, 2014, a woman named Tammy Jo Blanton sent a text message to her friend. She wrote, "I'm taking my life back. I worked too hard to get here. No one will take me down." Hours later, she would be dead. And what her killer did to her body would make this one of the most disturbing cases in Indiana history. Joseph Oberhansley was not a first-time killer. In 1998, when he was just 17 years old in Utah, Oberhansley shot his 17-year-old girlfriend Sabrina Elder 5 times. Sabrina had just given birth to their son. After killing her, Oberhansley shot his own mother in the back. Then he turned the gun on himself and shot himself in the head. Somehow, he survived. He pleaded guilty to manslaughter and attempted murder. He served approximately 12 to 13 years. He was released on parole in July 2012. 2 years later, he was living in Indiana, in an on and off relationship with the 46-year-old Tammy Jo Blanton. By 2014, their relationship had deteriorated. Oberhansley had been charged with strangulation. He'd led police on a chase. He'd been hospitalized for paranoia and delusions. He was charged with criminal recklessness. His bond was reduced. Tammy Blanton herself paid the $1,000 to get him out. The prosecutor who reduced that bond resigned after what happened next. At 2:50 in the morning on September 11, 2014, Tammy made a frantic 911 call. She told the dispatcher that Oberhansley was outside her house, trying to kick her door down. Police responded. Oberhansley agreed to leave. The officers departed. Later that morning, he broke in through the back door. The autopsy revealed 25 sharp force injuries, 8 stab wounds, multiple blunt force impacts. But that wasn't the worst of it. Oberhansley used an electric saw to remove portions of her brain, heart, and lungs. He cooked some of her organs. He ate them. When police arrived at the scene, they found a plate with skull bone and blood, a skillet, bloody tongs, body tissues in a trash can. A large portion of Tammy's brain was missing. Her entire heart was gone. Her mutilated body was found in the bathtub, covered with a camping tent. During his confession, Oberhansley told police he ate her brain to get the third eye. The case took years to reach trial. Oberhansley was ruled incompetent in October 2017 and committed to a mental hospital. The first trial in August 2019 ended in mistrial. At the second trial in September 2020, Oberhansley took the stand. He claimed 2 black men had committed the murder. He said his confession was coerced. The jury didn't believe him. They found him guilty of murder and burglary, not guilty of rape. He was sentenced to life without parole. Tammy's mother, Linda Harbin, addressed him directly at sentencing. She said, "You don't deserve to breathe. You've taken so much from so many people. Rot in hell." Joseph Oberhansley is currently incarcerated at the Newcastle Psychiatric Unit within the Indiana Department of Corrections. The Indiana Supreme Court upheld his sentence in May 2023. He maintains his innocence. Tammy Jo Blanton sent a text message the night she died, saying no one would take her down. She couldn't have known that the man she had bailed out of jail would come back to kill her, that he would eat parts of her body, that her final hours would be spent in unimaginable terror. The system failed her multiple times, and she paid for it with her life. But Oberhansley killed one person. The next criminal on this list murdered 4, including 3 children under the age of 6. Cohen Hans Barron. On June 2, 2021, a neighbor in Fort Wayne, Indiana, noticed his truck had been stolen. He went looking for it. His search led him to a house on Gay Street, where he walked into a scene that would traumatize him forever. Inside that house, covered by a pink bedspread, were the bodies of a young mother and her 3 children. They had been stabbed a combined total of approximately 55 times. The youngest victim was 2 years old. Cohen Bennett Hans Barron was 21 years old. He had an on and off relationship with 26-year-old Sarah Nicole Zent. She had 3 children from a previous relationship. Carter was 5. Ashton was 3. Aubrey was 2. On the night of June 1, 2021, something in Hans Barron snapped. He suffocated Sarah. He strangled her with his hands. When that wasn't enough, he used an extension cord. Then he stabbed her more than 20 times. He didn't stop there. Carter, the 5-year-old, was stabbed approximately 19 times. Evidence suggested Carter fought back. He tried to protect his family. Ashton, 3 years old, was stabbed approximately 11 times. Aubrey, just 2 years old, was stabbed multiple times. When Hans Baron was finished, he arranged their bodies. He placed Sarah kneeling beside her bed in what witnesses described as a praying pose. He laid her 3 children face down on the bed around her and covered them with a pink bedspread. At 3:21 in the morning, while Sarah and her children lay dead in that house, Hans Baron called his stepmother. He was hysterically sobbing. He told her to change his name. He told her to move. He said he loved her. He said she'd never talk to him again when she knew what he did. Later that afternoon, he called her again. This time, he just said 2 words. Watch the news. At 5:15 that evening, police arrested Hans Baron in Lafayette, more than 100 miles away. He was holding a blood-stained knife. DNA on the knife linked to 3 of the victims. Gardening gloves found with him contained DNA from all 4. Hans Baron had a history of mental illness. He'd been diagnosed with bipolar disorder at age 12. He also had antisocial personality disorder and major depression. His father died when he was 13. He started abusing alcohol and marijuana at 12 as what he called self-medication. In 2019, he pointed a gun at a man during a robbery and threatened to shoot him in the head and bury his body in a ditch. He was sentenced to home detention and drug treatment. In April 2021, just 2 months before the murders, Hans Baron escaped from that treatment center. He was a wanted fugitive when he killed Sarah and her children. At trial, one juror became violently ill during testimony about what had been done to those children. The jury found him guilty on all 4 counts of murder. Hans Baron waived his right to appear at both the verdict and sentencing hearings. Sarah's family called him a coward. He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. It was Allen County's first life without parole case. Sarah's mother, Melanie Fields, told the court that every day she sees the whole scene. She relives it every day. The case inspired Indiana legislation called Aubrey's Law, named for the 2-year-old victim. Senate Bill 9 now requires convicted criminals to be present during victim impact statements. Cohen Hans Baron is serving his sentence at Pendleton Correctional Facility. The Indiana Supreme Court affirmed his convictions in June 2024. He was 21 years old when he stabbed 3 children to death. The oldest was 5. The youngest was 2. But not everyone on this list is a clear-cut monster. The next case raises a troubling question. What happens when someone goes to prison for a crime they may not have personally committed? Kofi Modibo Ajabu. On March 16, 1994, 3 people were murdered in one of the wealthiest communities in Indiana. Their throats were slashed during a home robbery in the Thistlewood subdivision of Carmel. Nicholas Alamenos was 17, a senior at Carmel High School, an A student planning to attend Boston College. His sister Lisa was 13, a violinist who had won first place at a regional contest just 1 month before her death. Christopher James was 23, a family employee and friend. Their father was away on a Caribbean golf trip. He came home to find his children and his employee dead. 3 men were arrested for the crime: Raymond Adams, James Walls, and Kofi Modibo Ajabu, who went by the nickname Debo. Ajabu was 19 years old, a junior at Jackson State University studying to become a veterinarian. Here's where this case gets complicated. Raymond Adams is identified as the actual killer. A footprint found where Lisa was killed matched Adams, not Ajabu. Ajabu admitted to bringing a weapon, standing watch, helping tape victims, and carrying stolen electronics. But he did not personally kill anyone. Under Indiana's felony murder laws, it didn't matter. All accomplices are held equally responsible for deaths that occurred during a felony, regardless of who actually commits the killing. Ajabu was offered a plea deal, 20 years. He refused. He said he would not confess to murders he did not commit. Had he taken that deal, he would have been released years ago. His family maintains that Ajabu didn't know what was planned. They say the first time he went to that house was to smoke weed and sell it. They say he had no idea anyone would be killed. There were problems with his case from the start. Ajabu's father retained an attorney who called the jail requesting that police not interrogate his son. Police proceeded with the interrogation anyway. Without informing Ajabu that an attorney had called on his behalf, the courts upheld the confession. In August 1995, Kofi Ajabu was convicted and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The same sentence as Raymond Adams, the man who actually slit 3 throats. Ajabu has now spent 30 years in prison. During that time, he earned a bachelor's degree from Ball State University. He learned conversational skills in 5 languages. In 2024, something unexpected happened. The jury foreperson from his trial, a man named Orvon Maybe Jr., wrote a letter supporting clemency. In that letter, Maybe wrote that he never believed Kofi killed anyone. He said the jury was bound by the way the law was written. He said he has carried the weight of that decision for 30 years. United States Representative Andre Carson has written in support of a clemency review. Ajabu has a clemency hearing scheduled for November 5, 2025, before the Indiana Parole Board. Indiana governors rarely grant clemency. In 8 years under Governor Holcomb, only 9 people have received it. Kofi Ajabu is currently incarcerated at Wabash Valley Correctional Facility, serving 240 years for crimes he participated in but may not have personally committed. His case raises uncomfortable questions about proportional justice, about whether someone who stood watch during a robbery should receive the same sentence as someone who cut 3 throats. There are no easy answers, but the final case on this list has no such ambiguity. A 17-year-old boy strangled his 10-year-old brother to death, and he did it while fantasizing about being a serial killer from television. Andrew Conley. On November 28, 2009, a 17-year-old boy walked into the Rising Sun Police Department in southeastern Indiana. He told officers he had something to confess. He led them to a wooded area near Connor Elementary School. There, they found the body of his 10-year-old brother, Connor Conley. The boy had been strangled. A plastic bag was secured over his head with black electrical tape. Andrew Conley had killed him. Andrew was born in 1992. His parents divorced when he was 10. His father died when he was 13. He started showing signs of serious mental illness early, including cutting himself and suicidal thoughts. He told psychiatric evaluators he had fantasized about killing since 8th grade. On November 28, 2009, Andrew's parents were working overnight. He was home alone with his younger brother, Connor. The boys started wrestling. Andrew put Connor in a chokehold. When Connor passed out, something changed in Andrew's mind. He put on gloves. Then he continued strangling his brother for approximately 20 minutes. Connor's last words were, "Andrew, stop." When Andrew was certain his brother was dead, he placed a plastic bag over Connor's head and secured it with black electrical tape. He dragged the body outside by the feet, deliberately hitting Connor's head against the ground to make sure he was dead. Then Andrew put his brother's body in the trunk of his car and drove to his girlfriend's house. While Connor's corpse lay in the trunk, Andrew gave his girlfriend a promise ring. He disposed of the body in woods near Connor's elementary school. The next morning, Andrew stood over his sleeping father with a knife, considering whether to kill him too. He decided not to. That night, he walked to the police station and confessed. During his first police interrogation, Andrew said something that shocked investigators and made national headlines. He mentioned a television show called Dexter, about a serial killer. He said he felt like the character because Dexter is a serial killer, and Andrew felt like him. Weeks before the murder, Andrew had told his girlfriend he wanted to be just like Dexter. They were walking on the same trail, where he would later dump his brother's body. Andrew later clarified that Dexter was just a TV show he watched. He said the only thing he felt like Dexter was that he felt alone, that he felt like nobody wanted him, even though he had friends and family. Detective Tom Baxter described Andrew during confession as matter of fact. He said Andrew spoke almost as though he was saying, "I'm sorry you have to hear this, because I'm assuming you've never heard anything so terrible before." Andrew's parents had withdrawn him from school 12 days before the murder due to what they called self-destructive behavior. The warning signs were everywhere. On the first day of trial, against his attorney's advice and with no plea agreement, Andrew pleaded guilty. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without the possibility of parole. He said the single aggravating factor, that the victim was under 12 years old, far outweighed all mitigating circumstances. Andrew told the court he was sick and needed help. He said he was just a person that did a horrible thing and shouldn't be alive for that. He said he was going to hell. The case became a major test for juvenile life without parole sentencing in Indiana. Andrew appealed multiple times. In 2012, the Indiana Supreme Court affirmed his sentence in a 3-2 ruling. 2 justices dissented, citing his age at the time of the crime. In 2021, an appeals court reversed the sentence, finding Andrew had received ineffective counsel. But in 2022, the Indiana Supreme Court reversed that reversal, unanimously upholding the original life without parole sentence. Andrew Conley is currently serving his sentence at Pendleton Correctional Facility. He has been described as a model inmate. He has made at least one major suicide attempt. His mother now asks for resentencing. She wants Andrew to walk free someday. Connor Conley was 10 years old. He was wrestling with his big brother. His last words were, "Andrew, stop." He trusted his brother. His brother strangled him for 20 minutes, put a bag over his head, and dumped his body near his elementary school. Andrew Conley will spend the rest of his life in prison for what he did that night. He told police he felt like a monster, that he was going to be what he thought he was going to be all along. He was 17 years old. If you made it to the end of this video, you understand why these stories matter. Not because they're entertainment, because they're real. Because the victims were real. Because somewhere right now, someone else is about to become a statistic. If you want more cases like these, subscribe and click here to watch our next video.